37 little words. That is all it took to change the lives of millions. In 1972, the government passed this law and called it Title IX.
Title IX states that no one is allowed to refuse someone an educational program based on their gender. Also, a similar amount of money has to be spent on both sexes. Even though the words sports, physical education, and athletics are never specifically mentioned in Title IX, those are the areas in which the law has had the most visible impact.
This law sparked a debate and a national conversation. Most women wanted it to pass because they wanted equal rights. The proponents argued that the Declaration of Independence states that all men are created equal, so why not women? They said that our country had already been through so much to get more equality, so why not take one more step? Title IX required equal access to scholarships, so it would allow more women to go to college, receive an education, and thus create more employment opportunities. However, the opposition stated that the Declaration of Independence does say men, but nothing about women. In fact, to this day, women are not technically part of the Declaration. They challenged the law by saying that there just wasn't enough money to go around, that women had enough as it is, women should serve their husbands and not themselves, and giving women even more rights would make them too independent and educated. Men were threatened that women with knowledge would be too powerful. No one realized that athletics would be altered too, and no one understood just how much. It was an unintended consequence that sports and PE were the things most affected.
Women have never been treated completely equal to men. However, there have been many improvements. Over the years, people have gained more rights through laws and protests. Our culture is always changing.
We've been through the civil rights movement, integrating African Americans. Women were organizing for more equality.
However, by 1972, our country still did not have total equality. It did not help that the Equal Rights Amendment had just been shot down. Title IX actually branched off of the Civil Rights Act. This act states that no one can discriminate based on race, but it does not mention gender. Many women were upset because they had been fighting for equal rights for decades and were not included in the Civil Rights Act, so they persuaded President Johnson to include women in the executive orders he was issuing. He agreed. One woman, Bernice Sandler, was appalled by the discrimination in the university at which she worked. They were hiring only males and her job was in jeopardy. She used this order to help save her job and then filed over 250 complaints against many other schools who were discriminating. Later, she teamed up with Edith Green, proposed Title IX, had help writing it based on the Civil Rights Act, and sent it to Congresswoman Patsy T. Mink. Title IX did not mention athletics. Its main goal was actually based on fair employment and hiring. It gained lots of support and eventually Title IX was passed. Many things have happened since the law was passed. To many, it was deemed a huge success, but to others, it was a failure and had many negative consequences. However, whether it was a triumph or downfall, women's athletics would never be the same.
According to Nina Chaudhry, senior counsel at the National Women's Law Center in Washington, D.C., before Title IX, there was the completely unfair stereotype of women not being able to play sports. PE classes were also much different than they are today.
They were segregated. Men's and women's PE programs were split.
Women did not get to do as many activities as men. Mostly, women would learn to do sports that were considered appropriate and proper for girls, such as volleyball and other non-contact and not very athletic sports, while men played competitive football and soccer.
There were no after-school PE programs for girls. There was no sports that girls could get into.
All men's teams and physical education programs were coached by men, and all women by women. The Olympics were also much different for women than they are today. Women were allowed to be in the Olympics, but because they were not exposed to competitive sports in school, they did not have the training to compete at this level. Furthermore, before Title IX, a similar amount of money did not have to be spent on both genders, so many women did not have the funding to go to the Olympics. If I was exposed to sports when I was in school, I wouldn't be in the Senior Olympics. I would have been in the real Olympics. Flo Mueller, a 70-year-old world record holder in the women's 70 through 74 110-meter hurdles. For the most part, men enjoyed the way it was, because they had all of the money and power. They played almost any sport they wanted to, had plenty of equipment, and were able to play competitively against other schools. Women, on the other hand, did not have that opportunity. Although some girls did not have the desire to play sports and couldn't care less if they were not able to participate, plenty of other athletic females greatly disliked the way PE and sports were.
I came from a family where girls played sports, and so I think a lot of the PE programs were geared towards girls who didn't really care about sports and didn't want to be very active. So it was somewhat frustrating for me.
Many things have developed since the law was passed. Schools were given 6 years to implement the requirements of the law, so the biggest transformations actually occurred after 1978. Physical education was changed drastically. Today, PE is co-ed. Boys and girls not only have the same gym and play the same sports together, but they have fun doing it. Also, PE teachers now teach the opposite gender. Sports were also altered a lot. Because girls are playing more sports in school, they are more accepted as athletes. About 30 million people under the age of 20 play sports today, and the numbers are growing every day. Prior to Title IX, female collegiate athletes were an unusual sight. In 1972, about 31,000 girls played sports in college. 20 years later, that number had tripled to more than 106,000.
All things considered, Title IX is thought of as a success. There are many great things that came out of it. First of all, there is more equality in our nation. Women are treated more equally in many different aspects. They get similar opportunities in school, they are hired more fairly, and men realize that girls can be just as athletic as them. Girls of all ages are now playing sports, from children to teens to adults. Furthermore, everyone knows that sports are good for you. The number of obese women is rising at an alarming rate, but because of Title IX, women play sports, and they are much healthier. They have a smaller chance of developing some diseases as they grow older as well.
Another positive outcome is that girls are doing much better in school. Studies show that girls who play sports get higher grades, have a lower dropout rate, and are less likely to do drugs and drink.
Doing sports a major focus, and it kept me out of a lot of trouble. And I don't see why that would be any less valid for the girls.
Title IX's requirement of equal access to scholarship money not only created more employment opportunities, but it has given rise to new possibilities in the sports field. Many college athletes now continue on in the Olympics or in professional sports leagues.
Many more good things have come out of Title IX. Making coeducational physical education a reality can be difficult in some situations, but grouping children by skill rather than gender fosters teamwork and respect. Linda Jean Carpenter and R. Vivian Acosta. Furthermore, sports are not only good for girls physically, but mentally as well. Research shows that girls who play are happier and they have suffered less depression in their lives. They are more confident in what they do, which is an extremely good quality to have.
Even though so many great things have come out of Title IX, there have been some failures. For instance, men's teams and budgets have had to be cut so schools can provide enough space and money for women's teams. Many men, such as Michael Martocchio, were angry about this. In a letter he wrote, he states, "Your editorial rightly praises the goal of the Title IX legislation, expanding gender equality in school sports, but it does not mention the destructive effect this poorly implemented policy has had on some male athletes in non-revenue generating sports. Also, Title IX has failed to completely eradicate gender discrimination in schools. Because the law was not enforced to the extent it could have been, many schools over the years still do not comply with it."
And there was a girl who, when she got to high school, she wanted to play soccer in high school, and there was no girls' soccer program at all. And so she went to the school board and basically fought that decision, and they ended up creating that girls' program.
In fact, even after almost 30 years, schools are still being sued. In the fall of 2010, the National Institute for Women's Equality sued a school district in Irvine, California for not treating females as equals.
In addition, it is said that Title IX did not go far enough in its efforts. Women's sports are nowhere near as popular as men's, and some of them are struggling. Women who play professional sports get a much smaller salary than men. Some professional teams have even had to be cut because they are not getting enough money. Also, in order to be the best, some women have taken performance-enhancing drugs and lied about it. Marion Jones, who won 5 medals at the 2000 Olympics, was said to be the fastest woman on earth. When she was accused of using steroids, she plainly stated,
"There exists no one who can truthfully testify that I have ever used performance-enhancing drugs simply for the reason that I never have."
She later admitted that she had lied. She had to return her medals and her reputation was ruined.
Moreover, some of the effects sports have on females can be considered failures. For example, far too many girls are getting hurt with sports-related injuries. In fact, about 1 million girls get injured each year. They can become injured by falling, getting hit with the ball, or by other girls. Another argument people have is that girls are becoming too aggressive on the playing field. They have become bullies and have hurt other girls.
Because of Title IX, athletics have been altered remarkably for both genders. Both good and bad things have resulted from its implementation. Whether or not it was a tremendous success or a disastrous failure, it has created an atmosphere of equality, and the lives of every American will forever be changed.